special thing in store. The light bulb inside my head says, get out and play, 'cause you never feel this way. It's my lucky day, it's my lucky day, it's my lucky day, my lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold, a rabbit's foot or two beats.
Before we get started, are you a subscriber to my channel yet? Why is it that so many of you watch my videos, but you don't subscribe? Do me a favor, take a moment, click subscribe below, and then let's get on with the video. Thanks. So I know, I'm gonna pick up right where I left off last time. You're all wondering, with me posting my profile saying I was looking for the perfect man, and here are all the things the perfect man would have. Did anybody even answer my listing? Come on, I hate to say it, but there are a lot of vain men out there, a lot of men who believe they are the perfect man. And you know what? They all answered my listing. I didn't even have to go looking for any men. They came and they found me. Every day I would go on to the Match.com website and Plenty of Fish, and there would be a whole bunch of responses. From men who all believed that they met the bill, or fit the bill, ticked all the boxes. So one by one, I would open them up and I would go and look at their profile. "75% of the men who responded weren't even remotely what I considered attractive. And if they had a picture of themselves as their profile picture holding a big fish, forget that. I hate fishing. So any guy holding a big fish apparently loves to fish. I didn't want to be forced to go out and fish. So if they had that big fish, X, not for me. And then, of course, there were the people who were smokers who said they were going to quit for me. So I really only considered people who were very adamant about the fact that they were non-smokers. There's no way of getting around it, and for most of us, we're beyond the age of worrying about getting pregnant. But there's so much more to worry about. But you got to think about what you're going to do about sex. If you'll recall in my last video, one of the things that was on my wish list for the perfect man was a man who was fully functioning. I think by adding that to my list, I eliminated the upfront conversations about whether I was still, having sex when I wanted to. another thing, when you go out there to meet these people, don't go out there thinking you're not enough. Oh, no, no, no. Listen, I had no money in the bank. I was struggling to keep a roof over my head, but I never let them know. I wanted to make them think that I was very confident, very successful, very happy in my life. They didn't have to know my financial situation. So never, ever think that whatever your situation is not enough. They don't need to know that initially. So, you've decided you want to meet somebody. Please meet in a public place. Don't invite them to your home. Don't go to their place. Don't meet them anywhere that there aren't a lot of people. My favorite place to meet all of my first dates, with few exceptions, was an Asian restaurant, and they had this really nice, huge bar. And I liked the food there, and I liked the wine there, I liked the cocktails there, I liked the ambiance there, and I was comfortable going there alone. So just in case the guy stood me up, I didn't mind. I went there, and most all of my first dates started at that particular bar. As a matter of fact, I went there so often. I talk about 50 first dates. I went there so often that the bartender, while he didn't know my name, he knew my wine. And so he'd see me come in, I'd sit down at the bar stool, because I always arrived early, and he'd just give me a nod, like, and he poured my glass of wine. I didn't even have to ask for it, so it was great. He probably wondered, what on earth is this woman doing? Every time I see her, she's got a different guy with her. I don't know what he thought I was into. But the key thing was, go to a public place, someplace where you're comfortable. If you don't drink cocktails, meet at Starbucks for coffee. I actually did that a few times. Not bad. It actually makes it easier if you're sort of on the fence about somebody and you don't even want to bother with dinner. Meet them in the afternoon if you've got that available. Just go to Starbucks and have coffee. Get there early, grab your coffee so you don't have to feel like he has to buy one for you or you have to buy one for him. Grab a seat, sit down, and just have a conversation and get to know each other. One time, I even met somebody at the Tomatoes in a grocery store. Seriously. I didn't really, how do I say this? I wasn't 100% sure this was somebody I really, really wanted to get to know. And the guy, he was attractive. The guy was sort of, insistent that he was tired of just talking on email, and he asked me, what area I was in, and I was on the way home from work one time, and so I decided that, okay, I got a solution. I have to stop at the grocery store. So I said, I will meet you at the Tomatoes. So I met this guy at the Tomatoes. We had a brief conversation. I decided in like 2 minutes, not for me. And that was the end. I was very, very picky. You know what? At my age, at this point I was in my late 50s, maybe close to 60. I was very picky, and I wanted what I wanted. And if there was any little quirk that somebody had, or they could say one thing and it would just turn me off, well, that would eliminate them. Check, cross them out, that's it, done. For example, one guy had a wrinkle right here. I should talk. I have that same wrinkle here. And every time he smiled, that wrinkle showed up. And I kept trying to figure out, why does he have that wrinkle there? I know, it's stupid. I admit it's stupid, especially now when I look in the mirror and I see that I have that same damn wrinkle right there. And I go to great pains with moisturizer trying to fill in that little light wrinkle. Anyway, it bothered me. There were probably other things about him that bothered me. But anyway, the wrinkle was enough of it. I got tired of looking at it. And it was like, okay, we'll have drinks. I'll be gone. We didn't even have a meal together because the wrinkle. Okay, here's another one. Some of you may find this strange, especially those of you who are watching from outside of the United States. Here in the United States, when babies are born, most of them are circumcised. And so I had never dated any men who were from outside of the U.S., who were born outside of the U.S. So to be very blunt about it, everybody I dated was circumcised. And I was accustomed to looking at circumcised penises. What can I say? I once saw one that wasn't circumcised back when I was a teenager. I saw one and it was like, it was just not appealing. I couldn't get past that extra skin, and it was like, what do you do with this? And you know, when it comes to oral sex, I mean, where does that skin go? I don't know anything about it. I don't need the details now. But so it became a little bit important to me. I mean, it was sort of like a non-starter for me if the guy wasn't circumcised, because I didn't want to have to face that fact and screw up our sex life. So I went out on a date with a guy who seemed very nice. And on our date, he told me he was born and raised in Germany until he was a child, like maybe 8 or 9 years old. Immediately, what can I say? He was cute. But the first thing I thought of is, oh my God, he's not circumcised. So that kind of ruled him out, and I sort of like found a tactful way to ask him. Like I made a joke about it, like, oh, you guys over in Europe, you're not circumcised. I don't know why I said it, but what can I say? It was something important to me, and I'm that picky, that damn picky. What can I say? That's me. Maybe there are other things about certain men or quirks or things that will bother you, but for me, it had to be a circumcised man. So anyway, that was our last date. Okay, then there was the widower. A lot of you will probably agree with me on this one. If a widower puts their profile up on a dating site, you have to assume that they are ready to move on from the loss of their wife or their husband, their spouse. So I had a date. I mean, I went out with a few guys, first dates with widowers, no problem. I went out with one in particular who I found very attractive. And so we met for our very first date, and we're meeting at my favorite bar, and I'm drinking my glass of Riesling at that time. And he's telling me he'd like to invite me over to his house and cook me dinner. And I thought, well, that's very nice. And, you know, I'm sort of banking this in the back of my mind. And he said, but I have to tell you a few things. And I said, okay. He said, I haven't removed my wife's things from the house. Now, he had been a widower for, I think he said, a year and a half, almost 2 years. Her things were still in the house. And then he told me that everything of hers, like her hairbrush and everything, was still on top of her dresser in the bedroom, just the way she left them the day he took her to the hospital. So the hairbrush was there, there was a pair of sunglasses there, a miscellaneous little dish with some jewelry in it. It was still there. And when he went to bed at night, well, actually not when he went to bed, but he kept her pajamas. After she took off her pajamas every day in the morning, she would fold them up and put them on the pillow. After she made the bed, she would put them on the pillow so that she would have them right there to put on that night. He told me he left her pajamas right there on the bed. This entire thing just creeped me out. I'm sorry, what can I say? I'm really, really picky. I suggested that he needed to remove his wife's things from his house before he was ready to move on and start dating other people. And I was very honest. I said, look, I am not coming to your house and getting to know you and having dinner, and what if I fall in love with you? I've got to move your wife's pajamas out of the way before we can make love? No, this was too much for me. So I said to him, I think you need to stop with the dating site for just a while until you remove your wife's things from the house and you get accustomed to the idea of being without her. So he was very understanding, and then he sent me an email the next day, and he thanked me and acknowledged that I was right and said that he wasn't ready to remove her things from the house. So, end of story with that guy. It's a shame, but my feeling is everybody's got a big butt. And by that I mean, yes, they're gorgeous, or they're attractive, or they're ruggedly handsome, and they have a lot of money, and they can cook, and they like to wash pots, and they're really good in bed. But there is one but, and it's like the other shoe that's going to fall. And everybody's got a big butt. Even my husband now, Jeff, he had a big butt. I didn't see it coming, but he had a big butt. We'll talk about that later. Gotta give him credit for being honest. I met a guy who actually was a friend of a guy that I went out with, and we agreed that there wasn't chemistry, but we agreed that we would just see each other as friends. And he was a guy who had been married many years before and divorced and decided he was never going to get married again. He was driving around in this yellow Corvette. It was like I called it a poor man midlife crisis with that Corvette. Anyway, the guy was almost 7 feet tall, which was already a problem because I was just under 5 feet tall. How do you dance with that guy? How do you kiss that guy? But anyway, we agreed that there was just not enough chemistry. So occasionally he would just come and get me and take me out to dinner, and he was just a nice guy to hang out with no strings, nothing to worry about that, he wanted to get in my pants or anything. It wasn't like that at all. So he had a friend from Chicago that he told about me, and the friend contacted me and said, hey, my friend so-and-so sent me your picture and said you were really pretty and that you're probably my type. And so I felt a little strange because the other guy had passed my information on and didn't even ask me. But anyway, I got to know the other guy through email, and we had telephone conversations, and then he came to town, and he seemed like a nice guy. We had a nice first date, and then after the first date, he invited me to come over to his condo. He had just bought a condo nearby, and he wanted me to come and see his new condo. So I went to see his new condo, and we had no alcohol. He wasn't a big drinker, surprisingly, but he wanted to watch, what's the name of that TV? Duck Dynasty. He wanted me to come over Well, I mean, he invited me over, and while we were there, he said that his favorite show, his guilty pleasure, was watching this TV show called Duck Dynasty about this family. I think they're in Arkansas, and all the men have really long beards, and their business is making duck calls. So I watched it, and it seemed funny. And the one time I went over there was like some Duck Dynasty marathon, and so I spent an entire afternoon with him and into the evening watching one Duck Dynasty after another. And I thought it was kind of funny. I didn't expect that this was like going to go on forever. So, as I said, he had a home in Chicago, and that was his primary place where he lived. So he would go back to Chicago, and then when he was going to be in town, he would call me again and ask me if I wanted to come over, and he would do the same thing. It would be, like, here's an iced tea, and there's Duck Dynasty is on, so he would turn the television on, and we would watch Duck Dynasty. And this went on. He didn't come very often. It was just a very strange relationship. In the end, my birthday, no, it wasn't my birthday, it was Valentine's Day happened. And for Valentine's Day, he sent me this gigantic teddy bear. I think I was like maybe 59 years old. The last thing in the world that I needed was a giant teddy bear. I mean, flowers, candy, some nice jewelry. And the guy had a lot of money. He had never, ever been married, and he was an attractive guy. Now, he was just into Duck Dynasty and sort of bizarre. After the giant teddy bear, I ended that relationship. I saw no value in it, and besides, right before that giant teddy bear came, I had met my husband, and after I met him, it kind of killed it for everybody else. But we'll talk about that later. And this guy told me that he worked for Homeland Security, and I was impressed. He said that he was trying to retire from his position, but they liked him so much. He was in a management role under the head of Homeland Security, and they liked him so much that they would call him to help out when somebody couldn't take a job. So he sort of was on the fence there, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, as far as working for Homeland Security. And he was also an air marshal. So whenever there was someone who was supposed to take a flight who couldn't be on that flight, or it was a last minute thing, they would contact him and see if he could work that flight as an air marshal. So I thought, this is interesting. So we went out on the first date, and he was very nice, and we actually had a nice time. So as a matter of fact, he was so nice, and I had told him that, I was a really good cook, gourmet cook, used to have a restaurant, all of that, and he asked me if sometime I would cook dinner for him. So the next time I heard from him, a few weeks later, because he traveled on business, a few weeks later he contacted me, and I said, why don't you come over and I'll cook you dinner? So he came over, and we had this great dinner, so he said, and then we went to sit on the couch, and we were watching something on Netflix, and he had said to me, I forgot to tell you, he had said to me that when there was an urgent call, he had this special phone that Homeland Security or the government had given him, and when they needed him, the phone would start flashing red. So we finished dinner, and I'm just finishing doing some dishes, and I had turned on the television so we could watch something on Netflix. And I come back out, sit down on the couch, and he said, "Oh my God, I gotta go. The light was flashing, they need me." And I was stunned. I said, let me see. He said, "No, it stopped flashing. It didn't flash anymore." So that, he just said that, he said, "Look, I'm not supposed to tell you this, but there was a bombing in Boston Marathon. They need me to go up there and investigate." So, I mean, it sounded official. I never thought it was an excuse to get out of my house. It would have been a good one. So it was months before I ever heard from that guy again, because I, at this point, just figured he was blowing me off and leaving. I thought, I don't know, maybe he didn't like what I served for dinner. Who knows? A few months later, he texted me and said, "I'm really sorry I haven't gotten back in touch with you. I've been on secret missions for Homeland Security. I couldn't discuss it, and I couldn't get back to Florida." So that was that. I never heard from him again. So then there's the guy that I met, and he suggested, rather than meeting at my normal place, that we go check out the sunset at the beach. So I agreed, and we went to this restaurant, and we sat there at the picnic tables, and he actually invited me to dinner. And so we had dinner, and then after dinner, we took a nice little walk on the beach. The sun had already gone down, and it was a beautiful night. So as we were walking on the beach, he said to me that he was looking for somebody who could be patient with him. And by patient, that meant he had gone through a very painful divorce that was not of his making. And he was still very much in love with his wife, had not gotten over her yet, and wasn't ready to get serious with anybody because he loved her so much. Who tells somebody this on their first date? Well, I said, you know what? You're definitely not ready for me, because I'm not looking for a guy who's still carrying a torch for their ex-wife. So that was the end of that one. So, I mean, these are telltale signs. If somebody says that to you, no. Okay, so I told you that before I go out with anybody, I Google them, and then I go to mugshots.com or whatever website there is that I can find online that shows mugshots of people, and I search for them by name. And I also went to the app, or if there was a site online, I would search for sex offenders to make sure that they weren't on any of those lists. One of the reasons I got so strict about doing this is because of this one date that I had. I'll tell you. So, a guy sends me his picture. He found me on one of the dating sites. I don't remember which one. Probably Match. Who knows? I don't remember at this point. You know, that was like 8-9 years ago. Maybe even longer. So, he's a very attractive guy. Tall, dark hair, very attractive. And we start a conversation back and forth, and he leaves out a lot of information about himself. But, I mean, he said that he was new in town. Anyway, I agreed to meet the guy at this restaurant. So he comes dressed to the nines. I was so impressed. I mean, this was like the best dressed date I had had in I don't know how long. Nobody I met prior to him had shown up with, a black suit, nice tie, gorgeous shirt. I mean, impeccably dressed. So we're sitting down now. He's not drinking, and he explains to me that he's a recovering alcoholic. You know, I have no problem with this, as long as it didn't bother him that I drink. I don't have a problem. I don't drink all that much. But he said absolutely not. And he ordered me a glass of wine, and he said that, you know, he had been in recovery for, I want to say, like 15 years or so. So it wasn't like he just started to go to AA or be involved with AA yesterday. It was ongoing, and now he was training people and assisting people, and more of a senior person in the AA, I don't know what you call it, the group, the corporation, the whole association, whatever. It sounded nice, and he said that he was also working for a company that was training him to be a financial planner. This was a new field for him. So I asked him what he used to do before, and he said to me, I can't really tell you. And I thought, okay, can't tell me? So then he tells me, look, I didn't want to tell you this when we were chatting, and I didn't want to put it in my profile because it's an immediate turn off to people. He said that he had been in witness protection and had opted for prison instead of witness protection. And I don't know what he did wrong, but he was married to someone else, and he and his wife had some kind of a business in Chicago, and they pissed off the mafia, mob, whatever, in Chicago. And he went into witness protection to protect his family. And his wife hated it so much, it destroyed their marriage. And she said, this is point blank, I'm leaving. So she decided to leave, but if she left, he said that he had to go too, and the kids had to go, because she was going back out into the world. So they all left witness protection, and he had to instead go into prison, and he felt safer in prison than in witness protection. I don't know what they did. And so he said that he had completed a prison sentence. And this was years ago, this happened years ago. And he said, but I don't go to Chicago anymore because there are still people that he gave information to the government on who also went to prison. And because he had basically dimed them out, he was like on a list for the mob, and he was afraid that if they found him, they would kill him. Well, you can imagine how I felt. This guy, he wants me to like be in his life, and like he's telling me, oh, you know, I'm like falling in love with you just sitting here. I think you're so pretty, and we're having such a great time, and you're so sweet, and wow, I could just imagine having you on my arm, and oh, this would be wonderful. And oh, by the way, I got to keep looking over my shoulder because Louie's going to come and kill me. And the best part of the story, when we went outside after dinner, he got on a bicycle to ride back to where he was living. And I said, wait a minute, you drove here on a bicycle? And he said, yes, he doesn't have a car because he doesn't have enough money to buy a car. And he was living at his boss's house until he could save up enough money to get an apartment and get a car. So for now, he was riding on a bicycle. This was before Uber. So I guess he could have called a taxi. But so he came to get me on a bicycle. So we go to the restaurant and, we're each having a glass of wine and making selections on the menu. We place our order, and then he says to me, I need to be very frank with you up front. I need to be honest with you. I'm not looking for a relationship. I just don't like eating out by myself. I'm very uncomfortable sitting in a restaurant by myself, and I felt like going out to lunch today. So I go to dating sites and I pick out people, attractive people whose company I think I might like. And today, you're the person. So, we chatted for a while, and I said, well, why did you even bother contacting me? Why didn't you just tell me that up front? And he said, would you have gone out with me? And I said, no. And he said, well, I'm sorry. He said, but here we are, we're having a very nice lunch. And we were, and we did, and we said goodbye, and that was it. So, it sort of helped me save money on lunch that day. I didn't have to go to the grocery store or, use what food I had in the house. So it was kind of a cost-saving solution for that day. What else can I say about it? So this guy was very nice on our date, and so I saw him once, and then another time I had to work, and he called and asked me if he could bring dinner over to my house and make me dinner, so that when I finished working, this is when I was doing inbound calls, I think for AARP, he asked if he could come over and cook dinner so that after I finished my shift, dinner would be ready. And so this was something new, and he was kind of nice, and he was a business person. He owned a very large plumbing company in the town where I was living at that point, or near that town. And so he asked if he could do that, and I thought that was really nice, and he came over, and we had this wonderful dinner, and he offered me a job. He was looking for an office manager at his company, and I thought, well, this is fantastic. Okay, sure. And he was so nice. Big mistake on that one. I went to work for the very first day, and I worked, I think I got there at 8 o'clock, and around 1 o'clock, I still hadn't taken a lunch hour because I was the office manager, but the only one in the office. So I had to wait there until somebody could come sort of to relieve me or something on the phones. I didn't know how that worked. So he came back on the first day, and he said, why don't we go to lunch? And I thought, oh, how nice. Okay, sure. So he drove me to his condo and then made it very clear that he wanted to take me to bed. Okay, that did not happen. I stopped the entire, whatever you want to call it, there. And I said, take me back to the office. He took me back to the office. I got my car. I said, I quit. Goodbye. The guy never paid me for working for that entire morning. I never heard from him again until maybe, I guess, a year later. I was still on some dating site or something, and he said, I saw you're still available. Are you interested in seeing me again? No. Another guy was just looking for somebody to dance with. He invited me to a club that was very close to where I was living, and they had live music most nights of the week. And there was a swing band that was there, and so he invited me to meet him for a drink there, and then we danced all night. I didn't even know how to do the swing, so he was dragging me all over the dance floor, and when we were done, he said, let's do that again sometime. And he called me again, and he wanted me to come and dance with him, and I had other plans going on that night, so I said, well, maybe I'll stop over a little bit later. And when I got there, again, all he wanted to do was dance, and that night he didn't even buy me a drink, and it was like, okay, done with this one. So I didn't want anybody who just wanted to dance with me and wasn't even going to buy me a drink. Really? make love before we went out to dinner. And then I decided, you know what? I don't want to do that anymore because I might not ever get to the restaurant. So, the walk of shame. Nobody wants to do that. Wear this stuff. I mean, go look in your drawer. If you have granny panties in there and you haven't had your period in 10 years, get rid of them. The best part is yet to come.